Cairo, Seattle.
This is Fight, an MMA podcast with Bob Stelton and Danny O'Neill. Insight and analysis from every angle.
You can't dispute the results.
The fights.
That was the biggest pay-per-view card in the history of the UFC.
Fighters.
We're here with Carlos Condit. He joins us.
Uriah, how you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you?
And everything from the world of mixed martial arts. It's time for Fight.
Isn't there zero way this happens? Like, honestly, do you think
I kind of want to say no, but there's a part of me that thinks it could. But Dana would have to allow it.
Correct. So Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, this is the thing that circulated, not even circulated in the back burner. I would say this has been one of the 4 or 5 most dominant storylines for the public consumption of MMA in general and UFC in particular, whether or not that fight would occur.
Right. And it gets a little heat. You know, they'll talk to each guy and they'll bring each other up and take shots at each other, and then it kind of dies down. And you know, we recently had Floyd caught out on the street with his crew and saying, "Don't insult me by comparing me to Conor." And has he made $100 million a night? Has he made 300? It's about money to him, obviously.
Right.
That establishes how great you are in history based on how big your paycheck was. But, you know, now you've got Conor's agent coming out saying we're very interested if he's serious. They'd both stand to make a tremendous amount of money. I don't think it'd be a competitive fight. I think the buildup would be fun. I think it'd be an amazing buildup. I mean, if Floyd's a master at anything other than being a creep, it's being a defensive fighter and selling a fight. Because his fights never pay off, if you think about it. Anybody who's watched Floyd Mayweather, unless you're just in the bag for Floyd and you love him and you like watching defense and the jab, clutch, run, if you like that, then it pays off. But for anybody that's looking for action, his fights never pay off. They are dull. And Dana White was 1,000% accurate when he said, listen, when Conor touches guys, they go to sleep. Floyd puts people to sleep too, but with his fights.
Ooh!
You know, and he's 1,000% right. So the actual fight itself, I think, would probably be a dud because I don't think Floyd would engage him. I think he'd just try to pick him apart, which he probably would. He'd probably sit on the outside, jab, move around, clutch, jab, move around, clutch, you know, try to pot shot, things like that. Conor would I just picture him trying to knock him out, trying to land that one big punch, and it'd be a unanimous decision in favor of Floyd Mayweather, and it'd be a dull night. But the buildup would be spectacular. The trash talk would be on another level. All of the hype would be second to none. They'd both make a boatload of money, and ultimately, as fight fans, we'd all be disappointed.
It is Fight, an MMA podcast. I'm Danny O'Neill here with Bob Stelton. A little bit of a different week. We don't have an interview this week. It'll be the first time that we don't have one, in part because I didn't trim up the Chris Lieben interview that I was supposed to. It took me about 2 months of teasing it to get the interview done.
And now it's just sitting.
It's
gathering. It's aging. It's all right.
Yeah. So
it's a holiday week.
Yeah, that didn't happen. So instead, I guess maybe our Thanksgiving present to you is going to be a little bit of a shorter show with just the two of us yakking. I can see the upside for Conor. Conor would make more money on this fight than he's made yet.
Of course.
I can see the upside. And I can also see the upside for Conor if he was the one to beat Floyd Mayweather. If that happened, whether it was a puncher's chance or whatever you want to say, if he connected and knocked him out in whatever way, his legend would he would be more famous than any other fighter in the past since Tyson when he emerged.
If McGregor did that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, he's already regarded as the most interesting, best fighter. And if he went into a totally different discipline and beat that guy for the first time.
Beat the guy that everybody looks at as unbeatable, who hasn't been beaten to this point of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be maybe the biggest upset in the history of boxing. I don't know what the odds would be in a what Vegas would set the odds at, but the idea that this is not a boxer, first of all, yes, he's in combat sports, but it is a decidedly different discipline. Right? I mean, it is night and day, and I don't think people really understand it. And if you're curious, go watch James Toney. Watch James Toney fight Randy Couture, and we've talked about this before. It was not competitive. No. James Toney is an elite level fighter. Was an elite level fighter. I mean, he had brilliant fights with Roy Jones Jr. and Mike McCallum and all kinds of great fights out there. I mean, he was a guy that fought from middleweight all the way up to heavyweight. But he got in the cage with Randy Couture and he was out of his element, and the fight ended rapidly, just like it would if Floyd were in the cage. It would be the same outcome.
And did Couture, did he choke him out? Was it a rear naked choke?
I think it was the arm triangle.
Arm triangle.
I believe. Yeah, it was quick. I mean, Tony didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know how to defend it. He got put on his back. He was in full mount, or Couture was, and I just remember Tony flailing, trying to punch up from his back, didn't really know what to do, and he tapped out.
And that's what would happen. What maybe Floyd would be able to run away from him for 30 seconds. The fight lasts short. The fight in the cage would be shorter than the fight in the ring.
The only thing that would make it interesting, I think, in the cage is if Conor said, all right, you're in my world, I'm going to stand with you for a while. He's got that kind of ego. I don't think he immediately just gives in to, all right, you're a better stand-up fighter than me, so I'm going to take you down. Because that's not really Conor's game.
That's true.
Now, it's more his game than Floyd's, obviously. His ground game, whatever it is going to be light years ahead of whatever Floyd knows. But I could see Conor saying, no, we've got 4-ounce gloves. Let's see what you got. I could definitely see him trying to stand with him.
I honestly think there's about a 2% chance that Conor ends up boxing Floyd. I think there's a 0% chance that Floyd ever sets foot in a cage.
Oh, no.
There's no chance. There's zero.
It's not a conversation.
No.
He knows better.
If Conor wants to fight Floyd Mayweather, it's going to be a boxing match.
It's going to be under Floyd's terms.
Correct.
His sport, his conditions, his everything. Yeah. Floyd's he's dumb, but he's not that dumb.
Does this frustrate you when you read the stories? Because I look at it, I honestly see it as if, and I just watched this movie, which was just garbage. Just garbage. Superman versus Batman.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me you hated that so much.
Garbage film.
I saw it with a buddy who loves that stuff. I took him to a screening, and I was sort of entertained by the visual, but I was just kind of like, I didn't leave feeling either any kind of way, as Earl Thomas likes to say. I didn't feel any type of way about it.
I like superhero movies. Like I had comic books as a kid. I had superhero action figures. I watched that thing and I was like, that thing is basura. Just straight trash. It's garbage.
Wait a minute. What did you say?
Basura?
What does that mean?
It's garbage in Spanish.
Oh, I should know that, but
no?
I didn't.
Yeah. Basura?
Basura!
Just straight basura.
But are you saying this would be trash?
I look at it as the same sort of imaginary matchup where that's never really going to happen. And, did Superman fight Batman and what would happen? That's kind of like this, of what would happen if Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor fought, where I'm like, I don't think it's an interesting intellectual exercise. I don't think it's very realistic that it's ever going to happen.
Would you watch it?
If it happened, yes, absolutely I would. But I think the chances of it happening are so fantastically small.
I can see. I mean, all it really takes is, yes, Dana needs to sign off on it. He's under contract with the UFC, but I could see Floyd going, "This is easy pickings for me. I could build this up. We're going to keep building it up. Let it simmer for a while. I'm going to build it up. I'm going to pick this guy apart and make the easiest $150 million I've ever made." I think in Floyd's mind, he looks at Conor and says, this guy poses no threat to me. He's so far out of his element. It's going to be easy work. I could see him looking at it like that and saying, I'm going to make $150 million, whatever. Okay, easy night's work. I don't even have to train for him the way I trained for Pacquiao or the way I trained for De La Hoya, or somebody who really posed a threat to me even though they were washed up. I see him looking at it that way. I don't know that it's that far-fetched for Floyd to. I think he's doing what he does. He builds it up. He talks smack forever. He did it for 6 years almost with Pacquiao. Waited for him to get old, but it's what he does. He tries to let the fight boil, let it cook for a while, let people start to anticipate, let them talk about it, and then let it be reality. Now I don't know that it will. I'm along the lines of what you're saying. Chances are slim, but I wouldn't say it's impossible by any stretch. Conor would do it in a second. You guarantee him $100 million, he's going to do it in a second. He just needs Dana White and the UFC to sign off on it.
And he's also angling for more money. And that's going to be I think that's the subtext of what's going on, because you read the story where his agent is sort of engaging in the Floyd Mayweather.
It's also engaging with the WWE as well.
That makes more sense to me, because that is simply a payoff, right?
Yeah.
That is, you're not going to really go in there and fight. You're not really going to go in there. And I could see him doing that, and also the UFC being okay with that.
Yeah, and his quote is, "It's all about business, man. If the WWE is going to come to us with an offer, we're willing to entertain it. We're here. Have their people call his people, which is me. We can have a conversation." So obviously they're open to any avenue that's going to provide large chunks of money.
Would the UFC allow Conor to risk it? Because there's twofold risk.
In WWE?
No, WWE is scripted. I mean, if they offered him money, I'm sure. And there's been the overlap already with having Brock Lesnar come in with all his
Ronda Rousey did a
Soviet
wrestling
Union
event.
Oh, that's right, she did.
Yeah.
She smacked Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Is that what she did?
I don't remember who she was in there with.
Something like that.
Floyd did a WWE event.
So did Mike Tyson.
Did he?
Yeah.
While he was in his prime?
No, I think
Floyd
it was.
Did it early.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did he do?
He went up against who's the huge guy? The really, really big guy.
The Big Show?
The Big
I think
Show?
so, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I really wish the Big Show would have sat on him.
I agree with you.
Gone off script.
It was a funny visual you can look up online. It looked like a tiny little toddler and his dad. That's what it looked like.
But the WWE, it's scripted, right? There's no risk.
Yeah.
For the UFC, with Conor fighting Floyd Mayweather, there's the risk that his drawing power could be hurt. His drawing power could be hurt in an event that doesn't really benefit your business, your core business.
Why do you think it would be hurt, though? Because he's stepping into their world, and he could easily say, listen, I had to fight by these ridiculous rules where there's no takedowns, there's no wrestling, there's no clinching, there's no elbows. I had to fight his little sissy rules. I could see Conor portraying it that way, and they'd probably be effective to the MMA fan, saying, well, the second we get into a clinch, they break us up. He ran around the whole night. You know what I mean? I think there would be an easy way to explain the loss.
Yes, but there's an element of his mystique that would be lost.
Did he lose it when he lost to Diaz?
No, because he exists in this sort of, he's transcended your core MMA fan.
Right.
He's been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He's been on the cover of ESPN, the magazine. Like, he is seen in that way, and there are people that would talk about him being the best combat fighter in the world. And if he loses to Mayweather, after all the build-up to it, you lose some of that mystique, some of that edge. Look, the next guy we're going to talk about, Fedor, had some of that. There are a bunch of idiot MMA fans out there who see this as some sort of fantastic sort of exercise in myth building, that Fedor was the greatest fighter ever. There are people who still believe that.
There's still fighters that say that.
And those sort of things, that you lose a little bit of that mystique or that edge if you go outside of your element. And if he gets knocked out by Floyd Mayweather, or he looks completely out of his element. The Diaz thing was a little bit different because it was short notice. It wasn't like he got just destroyed. He got obviously tired at a higher weight. Like, there were some understandable components of the loss.
Right.
He didn't look bad in that loss like he could look bad in a boxing match with Floyd Mayweather. Yeah. He could look like a child boxing Mayweather.
Yeah, he could just get toyed with, which I think is a very likely outcome, that Floyd would do what he does. I mean, he toys with elite-level boxers. That's what he does. He's extremely defensive, doesn't take risks, sits there and looks for the pot shot, moves around and frustrates guys into throwing big, looping, wild punches. They're just desperate. They want to knock his head off his body because he frustrates the hell out of them. He's not going to engage. He's not going to get into a firefight with anybody. He's not going to do it with Conor. He'll sit there from the outside. He'll clutch, pot shot, clutch, run. That's what he does.
But that's part of Conor's mystique, is that can happen in MMA fights too, where you have overly defensive fighters or you have wrestlers, that he is not just a great fighter and an exciting personality. He's a really exciting fighter.
Right.
And he's kind of like the antidote to that boring, the little stuffed wrestler with a powerful overhand right. I've been fighting him for a long time.
Boy, he was right, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. and that sort of thing where he's, if you lose that element of that idea that he's going to be the antidote to a boring fight, you put him in there and it's a show. It's a McGregor show.
Right.
I think that's where the UFC would stand to lose.
Yeah, it would be interesting because at the same time, think of the promotion the UFC gets on the way there.
Yeah.
Think of how much hype and how much free promotion the UFC gets. UFC's not involved in the promotion, I assume, right? But all they're talking about is Conor and the UFC and Conor and UFC and Floyd and this big buildup to it. And the UFC's getting millions upon millions of dollars of free advertising.
What if we did it as a series of bouts? The first bout, a boxing match. The second bout, under MMA rules. And the third bout, we go to Pride rules.
There would be no third bout because Floyd wouldn't be able to make it.
He wouldn't last to that one?
No, he would get – see, here's the difference is I think McGregor would lose a boxing match. I don't think he gets hurt. I think he might just get frustrated and just a dominant decision, right? He might end up with a swollen eye because he's taking jabs all night. Okay. I think Floyd goes into the cage and he tries to engage on any level. He's getting hurt. If Conor elects not to try to submit him but hurt him, it could be a really, really ugly, rough night for Floyd.
Okay, then we give him 2 weeks to recover, and then we go Pride rules. Then we give him
soccer kicks to the head.
That's what I want to see. I want to see a soccer kick to the dome. Yes, that was
the
allowed.
guy can't read as it is now. What do you think's going to happen after that? True story.
It is fight. We are going to get to Fedor Emelianenko. I can say that, not Jan Jacek.
You got it.
Nurmagomedov.
Look at you.
I'm reeling him off.
You are.
There we go. We're on fire.
Show off.
It's Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for that. We're going to talk about that next. It's Fight, an MMA podcast. You excited for the return of Fedor, Bob?
No.
You're not pumped?
No.
The Last Emperor?
I feel like I got cheated on Fedor.
Yeah.
I came in too late. It's sort of like watching a TV series at the end that everybody's been talking about for years and years and years, and then you see it after it's jumped the shark on some level, right? I feel like that's where I was at with Fedor. He was never great. I was at his fight with Andrei Arlovsky.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that was in
so
Anaheim.
you've seen him fight.
Yeah, that was for Affliction.
Affliction.
I was in attendance.
One of the three or four shows that Affliction did? Was it even that many?
Might have been 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Not many. They paid De La Hoya a bunch of money just to sit cage side that night. A ring. It was actually a ring. But it was he won, but I wasn't blown away by him. I mean, I'd heard a rumor of Fedor, his prowess as a fighter, and he's the greatest heavyweight in the history of MMA, and they're finally getting him over here and all of this stuff. And he was losing that fight to Arlovsky until Arlovsky tried to do some, what was it, a flying knee, and then got clipped, and the fight was over. And then I saw him lose to Dan Henderson. I saw him lose to Bigfoot Silva. I saw him lose to who else did he lose to? There was another one.
He lost to Verdun.
Verdun was the first one.
That was the one when the mystique permanently cracked.
I never saw him in his glory, if there was a glory. I mean, you paid attention more to what was happening in Pride and the other promotions than I ever did, and I caught him when I looked at him going, this is a doughy, wild swinging dude that, yeah, okay, he's got some pop if he hits you, but man, there's a lot of holes in this guy's game.
He comes from a very strange intersection. Because when the UFC emerged into popularity, which I would argue is kind of 2005, 2006, when it took that sort of quantum leap, the Ultimate Fighter came on, Stephan Bonner fights Forrest Griffin, and all of a sudden you had this massive national interest in something that had, I think it had been slowly building credibility, the UFC had been over the previous couple years, since they'd kind of emerged from the dark ages when they were fighting in Tunica and holding cards, that they'd gotten regulated, they'd taken all these steps. At that point, when the UFC's just kind of emerging from that, it's huge in Japan.
Right.
It's gigantic. It's Pride, and what's tough now is to go back and try and determine where Pride situates. Because when I started watching the UFC, the best fighters in the world, most of them were in Pride. That's where Rampage fought. That's where Dan Henderson fought. Couture was here and obviously was an elite-level fighter in the U.S., but you had most of the different guys, and there is still this difficulty in discerning exactly what Pride was. And Fedor was one of the best in Pride. He and Wanderlei Silva were probably the two most dominant, most intriguing, and I've seen different things where, look, Fedor, legitimate incredible fighter. There's a fight against Kevin Randleman where he gets dropped on his head.
Right, I've seen that highlight a million times.
Randleman, who is a steroided out freak when you look at him.
Right.
I mean, he picks him up. Did he die?
Yeah.
Oh no. Really?
Mm-hmm.
How long ago did that happen?
What year?
Oh, no kidding. That's too bad because he was tight with the Hammer House and those sort of and Mark Coleman. a very, very competitive collegiate wrestler, but man, he was muscular. And he holds Fedor up. He gets him into the suplex where they would, in WWE, where you'd pick him up so his feet are sticking straight up in the air and he's there. And he dropped him on his head. Just dropped
really
it.
hard.
Dropped him on his head. 220-pound dude dropped on his head. And within 45 seconds of that happening, Fedor has him in an armbar and makes him submit.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Like, where you look at it, you're like, that guy's a robot. That man is a cyborg. There's no way that can happen. He had a fight against Nogueira, not the carcass that they hauled out there this weekend. I'm not sure who was working the strings.
Was it Minotauro or Rogerio?
No, it was Minotauro.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was Rogerio this past weekend.
Yes. By the way, Randleman died February of this year.
Oh, that's too bad.
44 years old.
He was a really intriguing character. Dye his hair blonde, so he kind of looked like Wesley Snipes from Demolition Man, except he was about 3 times as thick. So yeah, he fought one of the Nogueiras when they were actually not cadavers. And the punches that Fedor was able to land from the mount, because Nogueira just got on his back and was trying to work for submissions, and Fedor just destroyed him from guard. Like the sheer power of the punches, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. Couture was awesome at it. He'd get a guy in half guard and would just destroy him.
Tito at one point was very good with ground and pound.
And that sort of...
That was before the C5, the C4, the L5, the L4, the compressed disc, Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Would you like it? I was thinking about this. Tito should just go full sort of heel and come out there like Kurt Angle did when he was talking about, I'm going to fight you with a broken frickin' neck. Yeah, like come out there with a big cervical collar.
He should.
Like his arm and some sort of thing.
He should.
Come on, I'll fight you right now.
He should just come up there with all of his x-rays and a little laser pen and say, see this disc is collapsed here. I've got no cartilage here, and I'm still going to beat you. But look what's going on in my neck and my spine right now. So if I lose, you understand. But I'm still going to beat you. I've never felt better in my life.
God, so terrible. So Fedor is this legitimate, like I've watched fights, but the tough thing with Pride is early in Pride, there are obviously fixed fights. There are very transparently, they are rehearsed, they're choreographed. It's as fraudulent looking as pro wrestling.
We played the sound from Chael Sonnen talking about Vanderlei.
And Chael's the one guy who's spoken about it, because so this is woven into the history of really good fighters. Nobody thinks that Rampage is a fake fighter. I mean, we've all watched him over here.
Right.
Yet you try to reconcile the fact that Vanderlei Silva won 19 straight fights in Japan. Yeah. And as Chael says, he can't win 2 in a row in America.
Yeah.
Now, is it just that he got old? I mean, that doesn't entirely explain that. Or Crow Cop, who was a very average fighter once he got to the UFC. You'd maybe even say below average.
Yeah.
I mean, he was not somebody that you would sit there and hunger. That guy was and he was marketed as this Croatian super cop, and he was an anti-terrorist fighter.
Yeah,
so you had
kicks,
all these...
One to the hospital, one to the grave, or whatever. One kick
hospital, other kick mortuary.
Yeah, something like that. It was a good shtick.
So that's where it gets in with Japan. And then Fedor is probably the toughest of all of those guys to figure out, because he comes over here and he's never fought in the UFC. He probably will never fight in the UFC. There's different points where Dana had really said, and basically said, came away from it saying, the guy doesn't want to fight here. I've come over, you've seen me, when we want to sign a guy, we sign a guy.
Right.
When we want someone, they come here. He doesn't want to fight here, and whether that's for sort of preserving that mystique. But then he comes over here and loses to Ham and Eggers, and now he's signed to Bellator, and he's going to fight Matt Mitrione.
Ham and Egger.
He's going to fight Matt Mitrione. And
former UFC fighter, former member of the NFL, right? I think he was a member of the Giants.
Yeah, Mitrione's going to destroy him. Mitrione will absolutely dismantle him.
I would think so, especially based on Fedor's last fight. Did you ever see highlights of that?
Yeah. It was over in Russia, right?
Yeah, something like that. And he was getting the daylights beaten out of him, and the referee wouldn't stop the fight.
Yeah.
And I remember the announcer in his broken English is, "What's wrong with Fedor? How come he don't punch back? What's going on with Fedor?" and it was just an odd call, and they gave him every chance, and he turned around and figured out a way to win, but he looked terrible.
Yeah.
And this is not against elite level competition by any stretch of the imagination. And now he's going to fight. Mitrione's not a world beater. He's a decent fighter. I tend to lean. I don't know if he'll get destroyed by Mitrione. I still think the last thing that you always hear this in boxing and anything else, the last thing to go is your power. Fedor's got power. He can, if he hits you, he's going to hurt you. So if Mitrione decides he wants to trade with him, it could be a problem. Could be. Now, he could land on Fedor, just like we've seen a lot of people land on Fedor, and it could end. But, I mean, even if he beats Mitrione, does that sort of bring his status back up to that mythical best heavyweight ever? Does it? Because anytime I've seen him fight, I've looked at him and just gone, what is it that people were raving about with him? He is a fleshy, doughy.
He's never been in good shape.
He looks like a bar fighter, the way he throws his punches, and he's incredibly tough. The Randleman thing is obviously proof of that, and he's beaten some guys, long before he came out here and fought in Strikeforce and Affliction and things like that. But I just have never looked at him and said, there is something unique, different, and special. No, I'm sorry. I've never gotten that from watching him.
And here's the other thing that happened at the signing. Did you see who was there? GSP.
Oh,
GSP was
he?
there, yes.
Well, I think he was cornering somebody that was fighting on the Bellator card.
Yeah, and that part of it, when I saw that, I was like, okay, what's going to go on here? Is GSP going to come back and fight in Bellator?
I hope not.
I don't want to see that. And I do want to see GSP fight
His
again.
His teammate is there, Rory.
Correct, yeah. But if GSP is going to come back and fight, I don't see the point of coming back and fighting in that promotion.
No.
I honestly don't.
Unless they're offering just ridiculous money that they'd feel foolish to turn down, which I don't know that they can. I don't know that they're...
Even if they do, doesn't he make enough money? Hasn't he made enough money that he doesn't need the cash grab?
Well,
because
that's what I've heard, but like any other athlete, that
you never know.
That doesn't always matter, right? Mike Tyson blew almost $400 million.
Dude, but he had tigers.
He
had pet tigers. Like, you have to blow that kind of money. Like, when you blow most NFL, and people talk about this, like the NFL player that, like, most of them are broke within 2 years of not playing. I'm like, yeah, that's understandable because they made like $1 million. And, like, you can blow through $1 million. Once you get up to about, I don't know, $90 million, and you blow through that, like, you have to do some special stuff.
Well, you got to have a lot of bad investments. Vander Holyfield did the same thing. He was
really?
not a drug guy. He was not a drunk. He just had a lot of really horrible investments. Had 75 children that I assume he's paying child support for. But he like started his own record label. He was paying for all these different things, and he eventually blew his fortune. It's not that Mark Brunell.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
I mean, he wasn't making $400 million, but he didn't make just $1 million either. He had a long NFL career. He made millions upon millions, and this is a guy, bad investments, people taking advantage. So
what's the craziest thing you've heard of an athlete wasting money on? I've got two.
Oh boy, it's
okay.
tough. It's tough to top Tyson and Tigers.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Corin Robinson had a pet dolphin. He had a saltwater aquarium set up so he could have a dolphin in his house.
He had a saltwater aquarium in his house?
Yes.
He made that kind of money?
You make enough money that you can finance a house with that sort of stuff. I mean, he had it, and I never saw the dolphin.
Well, you win, because I didn't even know that. I've never heard of that. I've heard of tigers and exotic pets.
He had a dolphin.
A dolphin.
The second one is that Matt Geiger, do you remember the old 76ers center with the barbed wire tattoo around his biceps?
White guy.
He bought a house from Allen Iverson, and he moved into the house, and he found a shoebox in one of the bedrooms with like $750,000 cash in it.
Really? Did he give it back?
Maybe it was 75. 750 sounds like too much.
That seems like a big box.
$75,000. $75,000 cash. Yeah, and he gave it back to him. He's like, "Oh, thanks."
Can you imagine having that much money that you don't miss a shoebox full of cash?
There's so many questions that come up.
It's like you or I missing a buck. Like, I swear I had $1 here somewhere.
Why would you keep $75,000 in cash? Is the first thing. Like, what sort of scenario do you have?
So you can go make it rain somewhere.
I guess, but that's a lot of money to make it rain, isn't it?
I don't know. Ask Floyd. Ask these guys. That seems like a night out for a lot of these guys.
So, hopefully GSP didn't have a dolphin, nor did he leave stacks of cash, because I don't want him to be desperate.
Or bad investments, and then he just what you don't want to see is the shell of a guy that you used to watch, who used to be the best of the best. I mean, Floyd is a guy that he could walk away, and people will argue he's one of the best, and that's fair. He is, as much as I detest him. GSP is considered the best welterweight in the history of the UFC, in the history of MMA. It's been a long time since he's fought. I'm not aching for him to come back. I would I mean, you go out on top. I mean, it was a controversial decision against Johnny Hendricks and things and all of that, but he still didn't lose. He didn't take a beating and then you never saw him again. I don't want to see him come back and lose to somebody who's got no business beating him.
I don't mind if he comes back and loses. I don't want him to come back and fight inferior opponents. I don't want that.
Well, that's exactly losing to somebody he's got no business losing to.
If he's gonna come back and he's gonna test himself against the best
if he fights
fighters.
Tyron Woodley,
Correct.
He comes back and fights welterweight. If it were Robbie Lawler were the champ and he fought, okay, and you lose to that guy, you've been gone for a couple of years, man. I mean, I'd like to see him take a tune-up fight before he did anything like that. But yeah, to fight somebody who, in the grand scheme of things, is fairly anonymous in Bellator. I mean, they're one of their most well-known fighters is his teammate who hasn't even fought there yet, Rory McDonald. Right? I don't see him fighting him.
Yeah. I do kind of hope that Bellator goes the direction. We've given them a template here. I think they should just go full pro wrestling in the promotion of fights. Have decrepit Tito Ortiz come out because he's going to fight Chael, supposedly, right?
Yeah, that's in January.
Yeah.
You've got a washed-up Fedor fighting Mitrione.
Yeah, present Fedor as the great MMA legend.
Oh, they will.
Never beaten in the UFC. Never the legendary, completely go over the top with it. Of
course they will. I mean, come on. They put on Gracie Shamrock. They put on Dada 5000 and Kimbo Slice. There's nothing beneath them.
Is that the fight that makes you maddest?
Yes.
Is the Dada and Kimbo?
Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
It was despicable. It was embarrassing.
Dada died like 5 times that night.
Supposedly. Every time I reread the story, he died another time. I mean, it gets more and more intense. He had renal failure. The guy basically was having a heart attack in the cage. It was like, and it was never at a fast pace where you thought, man,
it was gross.
It was from ding, it was an embarrassment.
Yeah.
It was two plodding, out of shape, out of wind guys throwing arm punches, and they just couldn't muster the energy to move their arm. It was beyond embarrassing. And anybody who hadn't been familiar with MMA on any level that tuned into that and looked at that as an example of what the sport is, to me, was beyond a disservice. It was shameful. It was shameful.
It's weird how Kimbo has kind of become, and he passed away, which is sad. But the sort of tributes that people had made to him about what
he got worse. He was awful in that fight. He looked better years ago when he was less experienced.
And the other thing was, it was just so brutal. The fights that he drew people to were awful. The Seth Petrozelli fight where he got
knocked him out.
Correct, who was undersized and later said that they offered him money to stay on his feet with him and not take him down because that would be all of it. It was horrible.
Yeah, that's the one that bothered me, though. I mean, at least Gracie and Shamrock at one point were credible, legitimate fighters. I mean, now it's sort of like that De Niro movie, Stallone fighting. What is it, a grudge match?
Grudge match, yeah.
That's kind of what it was. I mean, two guys who probably hurt themselves putting on their gloves and their shorts and walking into the cage. It was embarrassing on that level, but at least they used to be somebody in the sport. Dada 5000 and Kimbo Slice, and it was just such a pathetic sideshow.
Arian Foster still has the best review of that fight. The single best review I've ever read. It was 2 iPhones on 1% racing to see who would download the photo first before they ran out of juice.
That is perfect. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
We got to end this on a better note. We're going to talk about the fights that are ahead, what we have scheduled coming up on Fight. I'm Danny O'Neill here with Bob Stelton.
Special ASLELS challenge for you, Floyd. If you can read one full page of a Harry Potter book, I'll give $750,000 to whatever charitable organization you want to. The bucket of ice, man. A phone call from my man Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy said if Floyd accepts the challenge, that he'll put it on the actual show, so you can read it on the show. We don't want to put pressure on you. We know you can't pronounce those words in that Harry Potter book, so we're gonna let you read Cat in the Hat.
That's pretty fun.
F the ice bucket.
Yeah, and then he takes a bucket and chucks it over the counter. Oh, that was funny. We know you can't pronounce those words in Harry Potter, so you can read Cat in the Hat.
So we come back from Thanksgiving, and, well, the UFC calendar starts to expand. We're going to talk to, hopefully, Joe Benavidez next week, who is part of the Ultimate Fighter that's going on right now, where they have the champions of all neighborhood corners across the country.
Right.
Who
The
are
wall
fighting.
with all those belts. Do you like that?
I like the wall. I think it's actually, as far as the different things they've done that have been gimmicky, I thought this one's worked best.
You know what's funny to me is how they cut to Dana talking about every fighter. And this kid, I tell you what, this kid can bang. And if he's able to win this, he could really present problems for Demetrius. I mean, and it's his job. He can't say this guy's going to get his head ripped off. He's going to get killed. But every fighter, this guy could be he could be a bit of trouble for Demetrius. He better look out. And he's got to sell it, but it's just funny to hear him say it about every one of these guys.
It's a structural problem with the show, is because you're having essentially a reality show, and usually the winner gets included in the UFC, which is not a huge stretch.
Right.
In this case, you're getting a title shot against their best champion, their
Right.
longest-running champion, and Demetrius Johnson. The idea that the winner of this show is going to be a threat, more of a threat than either Cejudo or Benavidez was, is that it would be a huge upset if any of these guys is even competitive.
It would be massive because I've watched every episode, and there's some good fighters, but Demetrius is on such another level. He's so far removed. Unless he comes in, which we've talked to him before, you've talked to him, I don't think it's in his makeup to overlook anybody or get lazy, but he would have to sort of just saunter in like, let me just get this done and I'll go on to something important. It'd have to be that kind of attitude for him to lose or to get caught with that lucky shot, because just based on pure ability, what I've seen, there's not a fighter in that house I give a shot to. Not a shot. Sorry.
And then the most interesting thing is that the best fight that's going to come out of this is going to be Benavidez Cejudo.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be the best fight.
I want to ask Joseph about his approach to this thing. I think he feels the pressure to sell it, right? Because Henry Cejudo is not an interesting guy. He's such a nice guy. He really is. It's hard. And I really gained a ton of respect for him after he lost to Demetrius, because he was incredibly humble, didn't make excuses, gave him all the credit in the world, and was just like, hey, man, he's fantastic. What can I say? I mean, I didn't think he'd be able to do that. He did. I mean, I loved how he handled the post-fight press conference. But he's not he's not a smack talker. He's trying. It's kind of awkward when he tries to talk smack. He's just such a nice guy, and I think Benavidez has taken on that heel role because I think he feels like it's necessary. Like, if I come in and be a nice guy and he's a nice guy, people are going to go to sleep.
Here's the other thing is I'm going to tell Benavidez I'm rooting for him because Cejudo kept us on speakerphone.
And ate a sandwich while he was, or ordered a sandwich while he was on speakerphone.
That's why I'm going to be rooting for Benavidez, because he kept us on speakerphone.
What if Benavidez is on a speakerphone?
Well, then we're going to have some real problems there. I might tell Joe, hey, get off the speakerphone, because that's what Cejudo did.
Don't make me come over there, Joe. Don't make me do it.
And then the week after,
you ever fight pudding? You don't want this.
We'll have the blanket approach to you. Then the week after, you definitely have the card stepping up with Cormier, who at this point is the light heavyweight champion. There's no asterisk about it. There's no interim. There's none of that stuff. He's the champion. He'll be fighting Rumble Johnson again. And hopefully we're going to talk to DC, which Anthony Johnson is, as he's the most powerful fighter in my mind in that division.
Well, and Daniel tasted his power the first time they fought. He knocked him down with a big right hand right out of the gates, and all credit to Cormier. He sucked it up, survived it. He was rocked. He says it. I love fighters who you watch get clipped, and you see the legs buckle. You see that they're hurt. They come back and win. The post-fight press conference, invariably somebody says, hey, you got hit with that shot in the first round. What was going on in your mind? How hurt were you? Oh, I was fine. I wasn't hurt. I knew exactly where I was. I wasn't hurt. I'm like, dude, your legs were spaghetti. We watched you stumble around the cage. So that bothers me when these guys don't allow for, I was rocked, but I fought through it. That's what champs do, whatever. No, it's no big deal. I stumbled. I wasn't hurt. DC came out, man, he rocked me. I was rocked. So I just respect the honesty of some of these guys who just come out and say what happened, because we all saw it. So you saying you weren't hurt doesn't convince me, oh, I was wrong. Those legs weren't wobbly. You weren't staggering around the cage. My bad.
It kind of makes you feel that they can't admit it to themselves, that their mystique or how they see themselves or how they're going to market themselves, that they can't admit any sort of...
Isn't it silly when everybody was watching?
Correct. Yes.
When we all saw it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's okay. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less than. You got hit by a guy that punches harder than anybody in the sport in Anthony Johnson. So I appreciated the fact that he said, yeah, geez, man, I still feel it. He's kind of joked about how hard he got hit. It says something to me that he acknowledges how hurt he was, and he came back to choke him out and win that fight. So I'm excited to see that fight. I like Daniel, and for some reason people love to hate the guy.
Yeah, I don't get the animosity toward him. I don't understand it at all. Like that, most guys I'll understand. I kind of understand why I love the Diazes. I kind of understand why some people don't like him.
Right.
Same
with Conor.
that.
I get it.
Yeah.
I love him. I'm in the bag for Conor, but I get how people on the other side are going, oh, I can't. Big mouth, blah, blah, blah. DC's not a big mouth.
No.
He talks smack. I mean, he and John Jones got into it in a really big way.
But Jones was the jerk in that situation. I mean, of those things, like who was the antagonist? It was John Jones.
I love the clip of them on SportsCenter before they were on air.
Oh, when he says, "Are you still on here?"
Yeah,
and then,
calling him, and they're just cursing at each other, and it was.
He called him. What did Cormier said? Because he started out
saying he was going to kill him.
Yeah, he said, "You think I'm going to let you do that, John? I'm just going to let you come in here and spit in my face. I will kill you. How are you going to do that, Daniel?" Like they're going back and forth.
And John was right. John just had his way with him.
Yeah,
in that fight that wasn't very competitive at all.
What was the other thing Daniel said to him? He goes, "I got to give it to you, man. You come off as a nice guy, but you are such a scumbag."
Yeah, you call him a big
just
phony.
A scumbag.
Yeah, you're just a bad guy. Yeah. But I was at the press conference. It was the week of the first Diaz-McGregor fight. So during that week, they had the huge press conference to announce UFC 200. So we were at the MGM, and they brought out all the fighters and had them face off with each other, and the arena's packed, and it's Faber and Cruz, and it's Jones and Cormier, and it was just all these. It looked like it was going to be this huge card, but Jones walks out, and the place goes nuts. Cormier walks out, and they are booing, and every time he picked up the mic to talk, they're booing him, and Jones is my guy.
Yeah,
I felt bad for Cormier. I was like, wow, what is going on here? I mean, it was interesting. He hasn't done anything other than just win, except for when he fought Jones.
After Rumble's last fight, when he got announced, he had to tell the crowd, "Don't boo Daniel. Don't boo him. He's a great champion."
It's
so
weird.
Funny.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
There's a part of me, and listen, the guy makes boatloads of money. You don't feel bad for him. That's part of the sport. I just don't really get. Why fans are so against him.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fun week. I know a little bit different. We appreciate everybody out there listening. It's Fight. You can download it wherever you get podcasts. Please leave us a review, and we will be back next week. We'll have Joe Benavides will be with us. Have a great Thanksgiving and happy holidays to everybody.